Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to this year's Policy Dialogue of the Finnish Society for Development Research, or FSDR. It is inspiring to see that this event has generated much interest with more than 100 registered participants. This suggests that the multi-sectoral development community of Finland is not too small. In fact, we are many. Hence, many of us in Finland, together with our broader constituencies, partners, and beneficiaries locally, internationally, are directly implicated and affected by whatever policy decisions are made in Helsinki. Those of us gathered here are stakeholders in Finnish development policy, yet many of us have not had the opportunity to take part or be consulted in discussions and decision-making processes affecting our work. The FSDR Policy Dialogue hopes to fill this needed social function as an open space and opportunity for every development actor, from academic researchers to policymakers and civil society activists, not only to voice our analysis, opinions, and sentiments, but also to co-create strategies and visions for Finland's relationship with the world, especially developing countries. I'm thankful to our invited panelists and research persons for immediately and enthusiastically confirming their willingness to participate in our gathering to discuss a topical issue that concerns us: Finland's development policy for today, past lessons, future visions. As you may notice, the title is framed to encourage constructive discussion. We also aim to address it from a historical perspective. Perhaps we can say that we are not only having a multi-sectoral dialogue here from representatives of different development sectors, but also an intergenerational dialogue to reflect on the evolution of Finnish development policy through the decades. While our knee-jerk reaction to recent news about Finnish development policy might be to question the government, particularly the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, in the spirit of meaningful dialogue, we should be asking questions to each other. This likewise suggests that the government must have questions as well for development actors and stakeholders in parliament, NGOs, and academia. Of course, all of us are curious about the incumbent government program's austerity measures, officially announced at the beginning of this year, 2024. These billion euro budget reductions will affect multilateral cooperation, humanitarian assistance, development policy loans and investments, support for NGOs and civil society, as well as climate financing. Apparently, there's a paradigm shift happening in Finland. As a long-time reputable donor country, we ask what's happening, what happened, what will happen, and what should happen. On my part, or on our part in development research, we are deeply concerned about tremendous state cuts on activities that contribute to research-based policymaking. It is also worrisome why a significant function in development policy, notably development communication, seems to have become defunded. In our academic field, we value development communication not only for its importance in information dissemination, but mostly for its role in consciousness raising. As we prepare for this event, members of the Finnish Society for Development Research have articulated a number of questions for our panelists and also for all participants to reflect on. For example, Why should Finland have a sense of global responsibility at this point in time in world history? Maybe others would say the answer lies in our shared humanity and the interconnectedness of our world. That Finland's commitment to global development is a moral obligation, a support to the principle of global justice and solidarity, as well as a strategic necessity for Finland and the international community of nations. Historically and geographically, as we know it, Finland has been part of the so-called Nordic consensus in development cooperation, known for its solidarity and commitment to human rights. Is Finland breaking away from this Nordic consensus? Our discussion today will also delve into the current and near future restructuring plans for Finnish development policy. What are the main rationales for these changes? What's the government's theory of change or development pathway by means of austerity measures? For us in the field of development education, for us in the universities, one pressing concern is how we can make the field of development attractive to youth and students, especially given the apparent decline in interest even among long-time donor countries. Engaging the young and next generation is vital for the sustainability of our development efforts and profession. The implications of cuts in development aid and cooperation, including state support to NGOs, are profound. What does this mean for Finland's image and relations as a developed country? We must also consider the concrete suggestions from development NGOs themselves about financing and how Finnish civil society organizations envision Finland's role in global development. And there are questions related to the ideology of the party in power. Does it significantly shape Finland's development policy? So this question is particularly relevant as we witness the prioritization of corporate business and national security concerns over development. And then there are also ongoing parliamentary debate about reforming the Academy of Finland or the Research Council of Finland with a proposed provision to consider national security and international obligations, which are raising important questions. How will this affect the governance of development cooperation and the roles of universities and civil society in promoting Finland's development policy priorities? Related to the seeming securitization of development, we also would like to hear comments from the panelists about the state of development finance and financing for development in Finland, particularly the increasing role of the private sector, and also whether is it appropriate to reutilize ODA in support of the war in Ukraine. We know that we only have limited time for today, so we invite all to continue the dialogue during the Development Days conference in Helsinki to be held on the 27th and 28th of February 2025 with the theme Development Transitions Amidst Waste, Wars, and Development. Finally, know that we also invite you to join the Finnish Society for Development Research as a member. We are not exclusive to academics, but also to development practitioners and activists. Again, welcome. I'm also excited to our dialogue. I now pass on the moderator role to our colleague, Eija Ranta. Eija.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bonn. My name is Eija Ranta. I'm teacher and researcher of development studies at the University of Helsinki. Warm welcome to everybody also on my behalf. We have here today 4 invited keynote speakers. We have Kimmo Kiljunen, who is a very well-known long-term politician from the Social Democratic Party. He is also the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And maybe younger generation will not remember that he has also history in development research. from the Institute of Development Studies here at the University of Helsinki. Then we have Juha Savolainen, Director General of the Department for Development Policy from the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. We have Marikki Karhu, the Secretary General of Development Policy Committee, also a long-term member of our researcher community. And we have Ilmari Nalbantoglu, the Director of Advocacy from Fingo. We have asked each speaker to prepare 10-minute initial talk about Finland's development policy, its continuities, its changes. And after that, I will go back to some of the questions that Bonn already posed here. But I guess Kimmo is not still here, so I suggest we start with Juha. Warm welcome, Juha. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Eija, and thank you, Bonn. Thank you for offering this platform. I really appreciate the agency of Finnish actors involved in international development. This is my second event, a multi-stakeholder event in the Finnish development circles today. So the debate is well and alive, and your topic for today is very apt. I think there's lots to draw upon. So I will address just very quickly 3 issues in my intervention. Development policy as part of comprehensive foreign policy, the orientation of our development policy, and then third, the system for implementing the development policy. And I will try to incorporate into my introductory remarks also some of the answers to those questions that we have gotten from you beforehand, to which Bonn alluded to in his opening remarks. So starting off with development policy as part of foreign policy. Development policy is an integral part indeed of Finland's foreign and trade and security policy. It has in fact always been such, which is manifested also by the fact that we have policy implementation here within the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. The aim of Finland's foreign policy is that we have all tools to our avail in the conduction of comprehensive relations with countries, and development policy is a very key such tool. The effort here is to strive for a partnership of equals with other countries based on mutual benefit and respect. And I think 2 very important aspects of the operating environment in which we are today is that on the one hand, there's a very strong geopolitical drive in the world. And somehow we must deal with that geopolitical world and see how we, as Finland, address that best. Then the other part is that as Finland, we have an intrinsic value in that we preserve the international rule-based system, and development policy and the way it's conducted has a very important role in this respect. Development policy is very important for Finland's foreign relations when you think about it, that at the end of the day, about 3/4 of the world's countries are eligible for international development finance. So in principle, the ability to utilize development policy and development cooperation has very strong geographical impact in Finland's foreign policy. The last bit that I'd like to pay attention to is what you quite rightly alluded to in your opening remarks, Bonn, is that Ukraine indeed. This is quite a manifestation of the changing in the operating environment in which we are. And it is indeed the fact that Ukraine has very quickly risen to be by far the biggest bilateral development partner country of Finland reflects indeed this change in the geopolitics of the world. Now, when you look at this summer, we had two government reports come out which outline the foreign and security policy and development and trade policy of the government. Together, they form a very coherent, complementary view of development policy as part of foreign and security policy. It's good to read these reports parallel to each other as they complement each other. Our development policy is very strongly based on the sustainable development goals that have been agreed upon by all countries in the world at the UN. And as part of our foreign policy, our development policy has a very strong value base in democracy, rule of law, human rights, equality, commitment to non-discrimination, and commitment of Finland to advance the position of the most vulnerable persons. Going on now to the orientation of Finland's development policy. I think it's important to see that there is a very strong long-term stance in Finland's development policy based on our strong values that I just mentioned, based on the SDGs, and reflected in the continuity of our development policy in some of the priority themes and sectors that are Finland's strengths. This long-term stance is very well reflected in the strong leave no one behind principle being highlighted in our work on our sectors of strength, promoting and defending the rights and status of women and girls, and education and climate action. When you look at our development finance in these key sectors, it's good to notice that we channel quite an important share of our development cooperation through multilateral channels, which are very much focused on the most fragile countries and on the LDCs. In the rights of women and girls, we are and remain key partners of UN Women and UNFPA. UN Women having a very unique triple mandate in having a normative stance on the rights of women and girls, being an important coordinating actor across the UN family, and having a strong implementation role. Finland is still, at the moment, we are the second largest country contributor to UN Women. And then on UNFPA, which is the UN agency on sexual and reproductive health and rights, where Finland is the number 6 contributor when it comes to ODA as core financing given to that organization. So we have a very strong stake and continuity in our development policy through these kind of contributions. And we work very hard through the boards of these key UN agencies in promoting the rule-based world order and giving a pushback to the pushback on gender rights and on rights in general. In addition to this, it's good to get a sense also of the fact that when it comes, for example, to the status of women and girls, that this theme remains a very strong cross-cutting across all of the work that we do. We are committed to the joint EU objective of having 85% of our ODA programming advance the rights of women and girls. We are at the moment, when you take 3-year averages, and we are, according to a more strict definition by the OECD that does not take into consideration core financing to UN organization, we are at about 78%. If you consider the core finances, we are at 84%. So we're doing quite good, but this we cannot leave this agenda for 1 minute. We must continuously keep on pushing on it. So these just as a sort of examples of the continuity of our very strong long-term stance on development policy. Now then, indeed, Bonn quite rightly pointed out that there is indeed a new focus on building synergies between trade and development in Finland's development policy, and this is true. And here, when you ask for the theory of change, the rationale for this new thinking, it comes from the fact that when you look at the SDGs, we are at the moment foreseeing that by 2030 we will have implemented 1/5 of what we set out to do as the UN family. And when you look at ODA annually, it covers maybe 1/20th of what is needed to make the SDGs. So we have a strong structural problem in the world, and we must get new resources to this work on SDGs. And we need definitely more private financing, and we need more strong domestic resource mobilization across countries to join in this work. And this is the rationale for having this effort to build synergies between trade and development in our development policy. And this is indeed, this means private financing, bringing more capacities of private sector firms on board. And it starts indeed from the fact that you need to build a conducive operating environment, a business environment for investment. And this is what we are committed to. So this is quite a wide-ranging field of work. And here, this very important frame of reference for Finland and Finland's activities is what the EU does. As the EU, we have already, for a number of years, embarked very heavily on this road. I think you can call, if you recall, the Directorate General for Development Cooperation changed its name in Brussels already a number of years ago to International Partnerships. So even like the lingo, how we address things from development cooperation to partnerships reflects a little bit of a change in thinking. And we are very strongly involved in this as Finland. And indeed, we feel that development and trade can be promoted in tandem, and they need not at all be, conflicting goals, but they can be promoted at the same time. I go on to my last point, which is about the system, how we implement. And indeed, the evidence-based system that Finland has for the conduction of development policy, our results-based management and our risk management have been many years in the making. Our systems, which are quite highly rated by the likes of OECD DAC, for example, we actually have a DAC peer review ongoing at the moment. We cannot have the results are not out yet. They will be out in December. So watch out for that. There'll be communication on that. And there'll be quite a lot of emphasis on our longstanding work on results-based management and risk management and evidence-based decision-making. And those remain very strong in our system. We are undergoing a reform as the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, where there is a centralization of activities when it comes to the conduction of development policy, where more and more of the implementation is brought here within the Department of Development Policy. We are building more synergies by centralizing our grants calls. So, for example, there is new communication just out today on the program financing for our big NGOs, and we are merging some of the windows for development and humanitarian financing. So we are trying to build a more effective way to implement. But something I like to emphasize here is that the instruments that we use are all well tested, all SDGs based. This includes all the instruments that we use to encourage private firms to join in the work on the SDGs. So again, when we involve the firms, there's a good, we always go through very careful due diligence and scrutiny to make sure that we stay on the SDGs and we indeed do not make a compromise between trade and development goals. So to conclude, I want to say that there's a lot of continuity in what we do. There is a drive to get more resources. There's a drive for Finnish agency from all actors. And that's why I also very much welcome this dialogue with FSDR. It's not a zero-sum game. We are all pushing the envelope together. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Juha, for your introductory remarks. This is a wonderful start. May I now ask if Kimmo Kiljunen has been able to join online?
That actually is true, but very complicated way. I am actually still in IT service of Parliament, and I couldn't open it by my computer, but by telephone I'm there. So I try to move to my room, and if you need my statement, I can do it in 1 minute when I'm in my own room. Now I'm in corridors.
Yes. Would you like somebody else to take 10 minutes time now?
Please do, so that I'm coming to the picture, that I understand what you're speaking about.
Excellent, excellent. Please take your time, and we will now take somebody else. Marikki, I can see that Marikki is here, so I suggest that we would now move to Marikki. After that, Ilmari, and let's take Kimmo as the last person, so he has time to set up. Wonderful. So Marikki's Karhu, the Secretary General of the Finnish Development Policy Committee. You also have long-term experience here in development research. How would you, from your position at the intersection of both being a civil servant practitioner and having a research background, how would you want to reflect upon Finland's development policy now, please?
Thank you so much, Eija. Thank you for having me. It's great to be part of this policy dialogue. So, as already said, I'm working as the Secretary General of the Finnish Development Policy Committee, which is a white-based advisory body to the government to enhance dialogue on and effectiveness of development policy. And in a sense, this committee brings together representatives from different political parties, interest groups, NGOs, the academia, and from different ministries, especially from the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. So in fact, in real life, I have the pleasure to collaborate and to know all my fellow panelists also in the setting of the committee. But I have to say, Eija, that I appreciate this opportunity to have this open discussion on where we are and where are we going to with Finnish development policy and do that together, like Juha said, that we all need collaboration, coordination in this regard. So I was asked by you, actually, the organizers, to fill in the role of academic researcher as well. So I'm kind of wearing these double hats here. And I was asked about the change and also to talk a little bit about the importance of research-based policy making in Finland's development cooperation. And maybe to that end, perhaps a few words about my academic background is in order, as it also relates to the topic of today. So I have my background in political science and PhD in development studies from the University of Helsinki. And before my current appointment with the Finnish Development Policy Committee, I worked as a researcher in the European Research Program at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs, that is FIA in English and UPI to us Finns. And my area of expertise was EU's development policy coherence and trade, and later on Finnish development policy in my postdoc studies. So this is my background. So really, as Eija described it, I'm kind of sitting with two hats and looking towards two worlds in a sense. And until recently, the cooperation with the academia was also part of our committee's ample mandate. And as a part of that cooperation, actually, I took part in a Nordic research project on paradigm changes in Nordic development cooperation, and we did this study looking at the past 3 decades. So we have some background here. And the project resulted in a special issue of Forum for Development Studies on Nordic aid, in which I co-authored an article on Finland's development policy. And we were actually doing what we are doing today. So we were talking about continuities and possible changes in the way we see development, how we approach it. So in academic language, you could say perhaps policy paradigm or policy model. And we did that by looking at the role of domestic politics, either maintaining the paradigm or pushing for change. So in this discussion, really, I'm drawing on both from the research as well as my day job working with the political party representatives, civil society advocates, civil servants, as well as our research colleagues there. And in the article, we used a very simple framework to analyze change. So whether there are changes in terms of key ideas related to development, so the very purpose of development policy, and consequently, perhaps also in the main goals and objectives, instruments, and of course, resources and aid agency. And I would argue that in the Finnish development policy today, you would find changes in all of these aspects. Of course, there are those continuities, as Juha mentioned, but really, I don't think that we had a similar situation ever before, similar to what we are facing today. In our study, our timeline ran until 2021. And we concluded there first that, in fact, there are significant continuities that, makes Finnish development cooperation, you can tell that some characteristics that are there, that there are really these strong continuities. But we could also identify political and economic factors that potentially could be drivers of change also in Finland. And first, the economic changes, they included such factors as the state of national economy, and of course, perceptions and interpretations related to that, especially economic downturns, which have always brought negative change in terms of our ODA levels, for instance. And then on the political side, Finnish coalition politics, really broad-based coalitions that you need in order to form a government, is one of the things that also may affect the ODA levels, but they also can bring about changes in policy instruments and even changes in the way we think about and how we see development. And I would say that in a way, we are in that kind of situation today, if you compare where we are to the past government terms in office. In addition, in Finland, individual ministers use significant power in Finnish development cooperation. And there's almost a tradition that each minister wants to leave a mark. And in fact, Finland has the Nordic record in terms of quantity of government development policy programs, as every minister and every government wants to have their own policy, which of course it's not really conducive if you are to pursue long-term objectives. So taken together, these factors may actually explain some of the changes that we are facing now. Of course, there's the very important dimension, the external dimension, as also both Bonn and Juha mentioned. External factors like the really dramatically changed security situation in Europe or in the Middle East, or the rise of new geopolitics. But of course, they also they get interpreted and acted upon in the domestic policy arena. So that's why it's so important to understand the political system in Finland, where development policy is also made. And I would say that if development policy gets politicized in a non-constructive way in this domestic policy arena, then the space for evidence-based decision-making gets narrower, let alone research-based politics or institutional learning. And this is one of my concerns. So ideally, of course, policy change would take place through learning based on evidence. But that, of course, requires also political will and political support in the first place. And then, of course, resources to implement these changes that are needed in order to take the policy forward. And of course, to be effective, learning would also require the shared understanding of the very purpose of development policy. And I think here maybe we are a little bit in a different situation than we used to be. So whether the main objective is poverty eradication still, or is it, as it is formulated in the new policy, the closer connection between development trade? That can be a very good and influential tool, but as it is formulated there as a main goal, I don't know if that's the right wording or the right policy decision. But of course, this is just my personal opinion here. And also, if the idea and the purpose of policy changes, then of course there's a risk that the lessons learned before are no longer important. So for instance, if poverty eradication is no longer the main goal, or we should let go the long-term human rights-based approach, then of course related lessons learned in poverty eradication or human rights-based policies, they are of course anymore the similar importance. So I would argue that in reality, the evidence alone, what Eija, you were calling for, and research-based politics, that's not enough, but it has to, in a way, fit to the political priorities that the government has. And that, of course, is a challenge. And I think this is really a place for frank discussion. And in addition, of course, there are different types of evidence. And this is I learned from a colleague from the Prime Minister's office, and that they also use this hierarchy of knowledge, which is very good for researchers, because they are placing the peer-reviewed journal articles to the top. And then you would go down a little bit. You would find, for instance, independent evaluations or commission studies there. And then at the lowest end, you would simply have politically or ideologically informed choices. So there is this hierarchy that is recognized, but how then to have this interaction going between research and practice, that of course it's a tricky one. I think in terms of evaluations, we are well off thanks to the MFA and the evaluation unit there. However, in the field of Finnish development cooperation, the link between research and policy practice, I would say, is still rather weak, due to also to the fact that there's very little independent research on Finnish development cooperation. This, for instance, what we found when we were doing our literature review for the article. Really, it was quite scarce, so that we lack that interest at the university level, but also we don't have think tanks producing that either. So this is where we differ from the other Nordic countries. And of course, then you need to have those channels that you can use in order to bring the results findings to the policy processes. And I think that Development Policy Committee is one of those avenues, of course, but this, of course, requires that their doors are open and that there are these evidence-based processes that you can enter and have. So I think that most importantly here, I think we need to ensure that the principle of evidence-based policies is not compromised, that is there, and that there is enough space and openness for evidence-based processes that researchers can participate. But I think I will stop here and thank you for now, and I'm open to any questions that you may have. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Marikki. Very informative, and also a bit of a wake-up call for us as a research community. I suggest we then move to Ilmari. If you would like to now, please make your first remarks on part of the civil society or part of Fingo. Warm welcome, and please.
Thank you, Eija, so much, and thank you for everyone for this possibility to take part to this discussion that is really important and also interesting. I'm also happy and keen to learn from the other good speakers while I speak myself as well. I'd like to shed light a bit about the past, the present, and the future of the CSO sort of cooperation and the role of civil society organizations in Finland's development policy in the past, present, and the future. So I'll start with the past. In the past, I think, and also in the present, CSOs have had threefold importance. Three big I's, I'd want to say. First, they've been the implementer, secondly, the influencer, and thirdly, the innovator. So three big I's. Implementer, for example, I think you all know the development programs of development organizations. Influencer in the form of, for example, influencing the governmental program. Maybe some of you remember to me at least, the touching choir performance during the governmental negotiations that was sort of trying to give some new context to the being Finnish, as the choir sang the Finlandia hymn. Okay, so that's just one concrete example of influencing the Finnish policy and especially the Finnish development policy. The third sort of big I is the innovator. What does this mean is, well, for example, we CSOs have been able to, for example, create new kind of partnerships between private sector and the NGOs, non-governmental organizations, or CSOs, civil society organizations. For example, just to give you a concrete example, in Fingo we have this sort of practice that is called Power Bank that connects local companies in the low-income countries with the CSOs that have similar sustainable development goals as these companies have. This is just one concrete example, but I think more broadly speaking, the importance of innovation work from the civil society side is that we Finnish civil society organizations work with partners in the low-income countries, and thus we have like sort of first-hand acknowledgement, first-hand understanding that, for example, what people actually need, girls and boys in refugee camps or families in areas that suffer from climate change and so forth, or human rights defenders in challenging conditions. What do these people actually need in order to promote their own conditions and livelihood and societies? And this can lead to innovation. Not our own sort of wisdom, but the communication between the people in the low-income countries. That's a really important sort of or source of innovation for me. CSOs have traditionally worked in three spheres: sort of national sphere, and then the work with partners abroad, and the third sphere that I think will be will be more important in the future is sort of work in the global sphere. So work that considers more just global structures, but I'll get back to that point later on. So that has been the past. What has the civil society organizations done in the past? But what's the present? How does it look like? Well, during this governmental term, for me at least, the role of civil society is both weakening and strengthening. So on the same time, there's push and pull. So it's a bit mixed situation, you could say. If we start with strengthening, first of all, money-wise, there has been, as you know, severe budget cuts. Juego already mentioned them in his opening, and these are really unfortunate. I think that if Finland continues having these budgetary cuts, we can't anymore say that we are living up to our commitments. We can't say it now also, but we'll just have to I don't know how to say it. The credibility will be gone if we continue down this path, and with the credibility also the efficiency of Finnish development policy will be gone. But it's not gone already. We can do good things with in spite of these budgetary cuts, even though they are really, really unfortunate. But what do they have to do with CSOs? Well, money-wise, budgetary cuts have not been targeted towards the CSOs. So if we look from the net sum of money point of view, around 18% of actual ODA goes to CSOs at the moment, if my calculations are correct. And this is actually quite a big amount of the whole of the actual ODA. Government also says, the political government says it values the work of CSOs, that it's a good thing. It's also in the governmental program. And personally, at least, I feel that it's almost surprisingly easy to communicate with the current government. There's a sense of wanting to hear and also sort of learn about development policy in this political government. Sometimes, not all the times. That's another discussion. Maybe we can delve more deeply in that later on. But sometimes there's a good feel of connection between the government. For example, just to give you a concrete example, there is the DAC peer review going that Mr. Juha Savolainen already mentioned, and Fingo has actually been a sort of part of this process as a CSO member of this process, and this idea or initiative came from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So that's one concrete example of how we have this good cooperation and good sort of sense of mutual objectives between the CSOs and the government. Well, I mentioned that there's also some weakening going on at the moment at the same time, and of course the budgetary cuts are a form of weakening of the role of CSOs. Even though the net total is not decreasing, some of the financing instruments for CSOs will be removed, especially financing instruments for global citizenship, education and development communication, as well as for promoting peace. Also, there is third one that is a bit more difficult to explain, but there are some targeted cuts to certain CSO groups, and I think this is really unfortunate. Government should not pick the winners, so to speak. Government should not say that which CSOs are good and which ones are bad ones. That's violating the autonomy of the civil society. This is very worrying road, and I hope that we are not going further in this road. We can do still some things that can how we can help things, how we can change the direction. So there's positive things we can do. Also, many CSOs feel the government is not creating favorable soil for promoting global solidarity and development. Just to give you an example, in the government program, the sustainable development is not mentioned at all. But in spite of these negative developments, in my opinion, we still can carry on committed long-term development policy if we want to. If we want as a nation, we still can reduce poverty, we still can reduce inequality, we still can promote human rights and sustainable development. It's the question of how do we read the reports, the policy reports that Mr. Savolainen already mentioned, and it's the question that do we go further the line of budgetary cuts, or are we going to say that okay, this is it, now we have the sort of frame for the rest of the governmental term. So that was my take on the present. If we then look at the future, what will be the future of CSOs in development policy? Well, I think that we can, in the future as well, CSOs can be an important part of the Finnish development policy, but there will be some changes. This is just my take that I'm going to present to you shortly. I think if we go down this road that we will be doing more budgetary cuts and we will be shift the paradigm from the sort of from the point of view of eradicating poverty and eradicating inequalities to just trying to promote the national interest of Finland, then the role of CSOs will be really challenged, and they can't deliver their good results that they have been able to deliver so far. But if we want to read the reports in the way that they are part of this long-term commitments towards these goals that I mentioned, and also Mr. Savolainen mentioned, we still can deliver good results as CSOs. Also, what I see in the future is that there will be a shift of power to the low-income countries in the development cooperation. So more and more work will be done from the point of view of low-income countries and by also those people and partners in there. And we, from the northern perspective, we will be more just like a supplementers or people who make some work possible. Also, what will be interesting is will be shifting more towards influencing the global structures. So that the global structures, let's say, about trade, about taxation, about economical systems, that those structures will be more just. So that will be in the future, I think, that will be in the future even more our sort of agenda and our role, if there is possibility for CSOs to continue their good work in the future as well. These were some opening remarks from my side, Eija. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, Ilmari. Thank you so much. Do we have Kimmo Kiljunen online now? Kimmo Kiljunen, do we have you online?
Practically, I'm not so sure. Yes, now we have, I suppose.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Too complicated for me, the whole process. I'm a digitalizedly alienated person. I totally don't understand how they work, and it's not actually my fault because even our IT support couldn't open it properly from my computer. Here I am by telephone. I hope it works.
Yes, we are so sorry for these problems. Many of us had, but this is the technology. But anyways, this is an event on Finland's development policy, changes and continuities, organized by the Finnish Society for Development Research. So we are really happy that you are still here, and we would like to hear your views as a long-term politician, having also background in development research. At least in the 90s, I was on your Introduction to Development Studies course. So remembering you also from research side. So would you like to reflect upon how you as a politician see Finland's current development policy situation? We have taken like 10 minutes. So that in the end we will already finish at 3 o'clock, but we will probably have time for a few questions before that. So the floor is now yours, Kimmo.
Thank you very much. You used very nice words. I'm welcoming you back to the Finnish Society for Development Research's meeting. And it has actually dual aspects, coming back in technically now for this meeting itself. But if I recall, actually, this Finnish Society for Development Research, I was one who was really helping to establish the society. If I recall exactly the year when you were established, I anyhow fully support it in a long time, and I've been obviously 10 years as a chair of director of the Institute of Development Studies at Helsinki University. I was the first doctorate in development economics in Finland. I made my doctorate in England, IDS there. Okay, yes, this is my field. It has been my field, and my heart, obviously, is in this development business, if you can say, global development issues, and obviously the Agenda 30. in political terms. Now I do have a little bit problem how I should address you. I would like very much to address you like a researcher or as a member of parliament. I'm a bit more hesitant to address you as a chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, because if I'm chairing the Foreign Affairs Committee and expressing that view, my points maybe are not exactly as sharp as they would be if I'm a member of parliament representing the opposition party. I try to balance, but please primarily take my whatever I say now that I belong to opposition in terms of the party politics in Finland in parliament, and obviously having the background also in terms of development policy as a whole. So that's the rules when I'm starting. Few points, and I don't make a big lecture, because obviously you can understand I have lectured quite a lot of time on these issues. I take only a few of the basics. Thanks very much for good presentation I heard. Very good to hear those argumentations. This is a very major change in politics as regards to development cooperation as a whole. The consensus in Finnish foreign and security policy, which I should always take care as chair in the committee itself, is a driving force in our discussions. Finland cannot be having different points of view on foreign security policy, foreign and security policies, particularly in this type of complicated times when it's absolutely necessary to find the consensus in the committee. Unfortunately, there's one area where we couldn't build up on the consensus, and there's a major task for us. I still try to do it. If we could do the white paper on development, trade and development policies on consensus, there might be chances. There might be chances when you look at long-term goals, etc. But it's a very, very shaky today, because clearly we have voted in the committee, not in my period, not in my time, and I have chaired it till more than 1 year, but we have voted many cases, particularly because the True Finns party. So there are issues on immigration and issues on development cooperation where we fundamentally have different points of view. And that's now reflected on the government program very clearly. The domain has been given to True Finns party. Mr. Tavio is heading it and doing the dirty job. I can call it dirty job now. I'm speaking as an opposition politician for that party, and the others are washing their hands behind and say no. It's he's doing and the party is doing what they can do. They have the mandate on these areas. You have already heard a few times that issue. So it's a fundamental change. Up to this moment, in terms of development cooperation, there have been different type of emphases with different parties concerning the quantity of our goals. In 1970, as you very well know, Finland joined for the second development decade debates in General Assembly, committed herself for the 0.7 goal in terms of development cooperation, which all other Nordic countries achieved already during 1970s. Finland hasn't ever, except 1 year, 1990, when by chance it happened so because the budget dropped down. So we got it, although it wasn't budgetary exactly put 0.7, we got it once year by chance. But anyhow, in those years, the aid level was close to 0.7, and actually during the previous governments also it had been quite close. The tendency has been upwards, but now obviously it's not only downwards. The tendency is we are on halfway now in terms of quantitatively compared to the UN target, but that's not the issue anymore. The issue is more about the quality of the aid. So we can almost say bluntly, and I put it very bluntly, there is now major change in terms of the basic values, how we are approaching the development cooperation, as well as the priorities set up. It's not anymore question of do we have economically enough resources to put on development cooperation. That was obviously discussion earlier, but now it's a really question, what is our aid? And now, if there have been, and we have long time discussed so-called qualities of the aid, Finland is now choosing exactly those areas for development cooperation which are least qualified in terms of the Agenda 30, in terms of the international development cooperation approaches by DAC and by generally by international community. I take few issues up. You already discussed them very clearly. One issue is obviously what was discussed. Do we still have a poverty orientation as the basic goal, poverty eradication as the basic goal? And we don't. Even the issue of the goal 0.2 for least developed countries is gone. It's not anymore goal at all. It's not, although we are even been in that level, but still it's even not the goal. And even 0.7 in the government white paper, which we are addressing in the committee now, is saying that historically we have committed to 0.7. I say once again, historically we have committed 0.7. And the word historically, we have understood, clearly means what it says. It was politically chosen, but purposefully saying historically, because it means that we are not anymore committed. And that is also very major change, that even the quantitative targets and priorities for these least developed countries are not anymore there. So that's major issue. Another issue is the multilateral aid. Always we have argued that the multilateral system, UN system, global international law, obviously as a whole, but the global network is our framework to operate, even in security-wise, also in development cooperation-wise, that we have the common commitments, global commitments together. That's gone. The global solidarity word is not anymore there. Not even the Agenda 30 is not seriously there anymore. We don't address our development cooperation from that perspective. So in that way, even the multilateral aid, we are cutting severely. Not to speak about the program countries, we are cutting severely. Good luck that they are keeping the good aid performance in terms of NGOs operating field. That's obviously qualitative high aid, and that will come to remark also by committee. There is a consensus, obviously. But anyhow, major break. And the issue also very clear. Now we will have tied aid. Tied aid committed, binded to the commercial interests of Finland. Development cooperation starts to be a part of the export promotion policy of the country. That's very clearly cut. When we discuss, as the government white paper says, and we discussed it earlier, you mentioned it already, that the link between trade and aid is a crucial one. We can easily say, yes, that's why we have the Minister for Trade and Development Cooperation. I was supporting the idea in early 2000, when I think it was the first time we had the minister in 2003, if I recall it correctly, or in 1999, I don't exactly sure. But anyhow, those days it was that we joined these two issues. The idea was obviously that we can use trade as an instrument to contribute. Those days we didn't discuss Agenda 30, but today we can say we could contribute for the Agenda 30. Particularly, obviously, there was issues of minimum labor standards. Those are issues of quality, that trade policy could improve the human rights situation in the receiving countries. Trade policy could be also instrument of improving the basic labor standards, if we can put in those terms, etc. So that way the link is there. But now it's turned other way around. Now the development cooperation will be actually being a tool for export promotion. So it's other way around now, the argumentation. And that is obviously major strategic change in terms of development cooperation, making it actually counterproductive in terms of how we wanted, for what purpose we have the development cooperation global solidarity approach on us. Unfortunately, today it's very clear. We earlier said we were free from countries. Quantitatively, we are far behind for Nordic countries. Today, we are not at all anymore a Nordic country in development cooperation, not at all. Our goals, priorities, even values behind the development cooperation policy is totally opposite what the Nordic countries are saying, and actually what DAC as a whole is saying on the qualitative there. So this is a major issue to address seriously. And for me, it also may be very, very difficult with how we can find a consensus at all, even in terms of the long-term goals, long-term goals, which will be defined in the white paper, which has been already defined by the white paper of the government. But when we are, as a committee, and the parliament having a response on that one, very, very, very pity we are living these type of years, and pity that it becomes a development political tools in Finland. We don't have a consensus understanding how Finland stands in the world. So to say that one, unfortunately, that's the case. Thanks what you have said. I think I used my 10 minutes.
Thank you so much, Kimmo. Very powerful words. And a lot to think about there. We have now 10 minutes because of the technical problems we had earlier. We had gathered many questions from research community to ask you, but I think in this shortage of time, I will just first of all ask each of you maybe to quickly reflect upon each other's speeches if you want to. And then as a member of research community, I will just ask a few questions. You can decide which ones you will address. Did Ilmari have something to say?
Just a technical thing. For me, it's okay at least to exceed the time a bit. I don't know if it's okay for other panelists. Maybe we can take just a few minutes more time.
Juha is fine, so thanks for that.
Yeah, let's try to stick to time, but if it takes 5 minutes longer, 5-10 minutes maximum, because I think many people will have they will have next meetings. But so I think first reflection about each other's speeches, if you want to. Then I would like to ask you about your views on the roles of universities in promoting Finland's development policy. And then I think it relates to one nice question that was posed here in chat about, for example, this new trade-based private sector turn. How does it relate to us as researchers? How should we approach that? And related to it, as teachers of development issues, how can we keep up students and youth motivated in development issues in this contemporary situation when many may not see so much future in this area due to the kind of political atmosphere in which we are living and kind of the negative kind of discourses related to development, to global south, racism, colonialism, and so forth. So maybe let's go with this. And I don't know who would like to start. Maybe Juha.
Thanks, Eija. A great conversation. And indeed, I also marked a point by Rosanna Avanto in the chat column on how to advise academia to collaborate with Global South. And indeed, I think we have a strong interest in promoting the sort of consortia of Finnish actors to find avenues for collaborating with our partners in the Global South. I think Ilmari pointed quite smartly in his remarks on the, everything needs to be needs-based. So we must be very careful in our actions to not, in a way, develop things up here, but rather we should promote innovation in our partner country contexts. And what we can do is then help in bringing resources for taking good concepts forward and multiplying their use. We have quite a lot of interesting things going on, particularly with the UN family, in that we've been trying to attract more of the UN family here to Finland to make use of the Finnish ecosystem for innovation. And we have a lot of UN actors in Finland nowadays, and I'd like to particularly laud the work of the UNICEF hubs in conjunction with Aalto University on innovative education and innovative financing. And the idea here is particularly, these hubs have to their use the entire UN network in the Global South. So, and we should make use of this as the Finnish ecosystem in a way to get good dialogue ongoing. The idea here is that we can bring promising innovations from the Global South and help with the work of these hubs and the Finnish ecosystem around them to scale up good ideas and find also innovative ways of getting financing from the private sector and elsewhere. There's a lot of other things I could comment on, but for sake of time, let me just focus on one more thing, which is the fact. On quantity and quality of Finnish aid and the arguments that there are major changes in those. The cuts. Nobody can argue against those. They have happened, and what we try to do. I speak as a policy practitioner overseeing the machinery which implements this. So what we try to do is program as strategically as we possibly can in a way to maintain Finland's the influence of Finland's development financing. On quality of Finland's aid, I think the government program is very strong on this. The value base of Finland's aid is very strongly rooted in our core values on democracy, rule of law, human rights, equality, commitment to advance the vulnerable groups, and to advance non-discrimination. So there's no question about that. And all calls are genuinely open to all. This is something I like to highlight. And finally, that SDGs. Poverty alleviation is SDG number 1. Our aid is SDG based. So I think we're strongly in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Juhani. Ilmari?
Thank you so much, Eija, and this has been a wonderful conversation. Just like Juha Savolainen, I can't really comment on everything that I would like to, but just some sort of a comment on the big picture of the Finnish conversation on the development policy. And this big picture is seen also, I think, today in this conversation that we are having. In the development policy, this is my view, I think we are living in the time of sort of divided truth. We have the same paradigm shift in our development policy, but people like what is it in English? View it like in two opposite ways. You can view the paradigm shift as first towards more equal partnerships and more synergy between trade and development towards sustainable development. So this is one way to read the paradigm shift. And the second way to read the same paradigm shift is to read it as a short-term Finnish interest and export promotion. So this is the sort of time of divided truth, and we should as a nation maybe be more united and pick the truth that suits our nation and our partners globally better than this sort of division. I agree with Juha Savolainen that we need resources for sustainable development beyond ODA. Just to describe, the ODA in the world is, I guess, around 200 billion euros or something like that, and the need for the sustainable development is around 6,000 billion. So this just gives you the idea of yes, we need something more and something else than the ODA. And this is why I think that we should read the paradigm shift from the first perspective, from the perspective that it's paradigm shift towards more synergy, towards sustainable development goals. Thank you.
Thanks, Ilmari. Marikki or Kimmo, yeah, Marikki.
I can, of course,
yeah.
I can, of course, if Mike is not anymore there, or if she is, obviously she can do it first.
Okay, whichever round, Kimmo. Thank you so much.
No, you can do.
Thank you so much to comment on. I don't know where to start, so perhaps I start by echoing what was said before, and just to highlight the importance. Whatever Finland does, it needs to be needs-based. It needs to be human rights-based. It has to be context relevant. It has to be conflict sensitive. No matter what is the instrument, what is the source of our financing. And if we remember this, we can't go wrong. And if we do, as Juha said, we will do that. We really guard the quality of our aid in program level, in our advocacy level, in all our projects. Then we can really build the resources towards results and be part of the Nordic group and be part of the ODA and the Sustainable Development family and be proud of that. And of course, I would also agree with Ilmari, so that if this is the new paradigm, let's make the best out of it. If it's trade, let's look at trade. But I think that somehow, in the light of the white paper, the approach is really narrow. I think that it's fine if we have there as the core the Finnish export interest, but there's a lot to do in terms of green transition, climate action, agriculture, you name it, forestry. But then you really need to have science on board. And this, I think, is my comment also to Rosanna, that there needs to be collaboration, that really we can get it right. But it's not easy. It really demands resources, time and energy. And I'm a bit concerned that at this point of time where we have less staff, less external expert that we can use. Of course, we have the academia, but we really have to be now strategic to have those results from the research and put it them that also be able to in a format that we can use it in politics where the time pressure is always on. And if you think about the system of having peer review studies, of course, that's also academic debate. It's very difficult to find the absolute solution to a problem. It's a debate. So the cycle is very different. The nature of exercise is very different. But I think we can work together. The question of additional resources that we need, we have to look, of course, beyond the official development aid, but we need to look into investments and sustainable investments. We need to have clear criteria for that in the first place, but we also need to look how to de-invest and step away for instance, from fossil fuels, or actually all that is detrimental to sustainable development. And I think the role of science is there. And maybe just my final remark here regards the role of academia. Please keep providing courses, workshops on development cooperation, both international development cooperation, but also in Finnish and the EU development cooperation. Please provide a supervision of new MA studies, PhDs. So we have this community of researchers that can be there to help us practitioners in our very, very demanding task to promote Finnish development cooperation and make it better. Thank you.
Yes, I understand that the time is now already past. I try to be very quick. 2 points, what the chair already took it up. First of all, what is the role of research and work, what you are doing at universities? Of course, as you already discussed earlier, my role have been there at the university on this particular area, and I'm more than pleased that the Finnish Society for Development Research is still functioning, seems to be very, very well. Your role, research role, or university roles is very important, obviously. First of all, obviously, whatever you study on the area, that helps us in policy formulations. But secondly, if the point is that we need practitioners on this area, being those in business administrations, civic society level, NGOs, whatsoever, obviously the university creates a competence for us. You were afraid if the declining budgets means that there is no priority on this area, would it imply that we have less interests among the research community, among students on this area? True. That is true. Of course it is the consequence. But let's having that wording in mind. Governments comes and governments goes. And I think the new time will come. Those values which Juha mentioned are obviously values for us in general terms. Value-based realism. True, that's a foreign policy general approach. The values are defined, they are quite clear nowadays, we already know them, but the realism is also there. And now it's questioned the contradiction between words and deeds, what we do. And as Ilmari puts very clearly, he spoke about paradigm change. We can use that one also. In development cooperation, the basic values which I make reference when I say that we have a problem in values are solidarity, global solidarity, equality, and human rights. These are the key values. We can define them broadly as we would like in concrete terms, but that's what is the basics for development cooperation. And unfortunately, if it comes so that it's part of the export promotion aspects, then we are not actually emphasizing this global solidarity issues, even the equality issues as we discussed is not there, and also the global agenda in terms of sustainable development. Remember, sustainable both in ecological terms, economic terms, yes, but also social terms. And unfortunately, that is the major change, that the values, what we are generally speaking in terms of development cooperation, are not realized in the policy making if we are following the line what we are doing now. As I said, I'm opposition politician now saying this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to all our four speakers. This has been a delight, really interesting and important remarks that you have made. And even if I heard that there's many challenges, I think we ended still with some hopeful messages there. So really happy to hear those. And even though our session is coming to an end now, the discussions will surely continue. Our Society for Development Research will continue with our annual policy dialogue events. And I would also like to warmly welcome everybody to the next Development Studies Conference next year, February. Although it is an academic conference, you will hear about the latest development research but we are also planning to organize some kind of session related to Finland's development policy in continuation to today's discussion that has raised so much interest amidst both researchers and practitioners. So we will continue, and to end, I will still like to warmly thank Ilmari, Juha, Marikki, Kimmo. Thank you so much, everybody. And thanks to all the participants who participated in this event. And Bonn, of course, for organizing.
Thank you, Eija. Thank you, Bonn. Thank you.
Yeah,
everyone.
everyone is invited again for the conference in February. So we will organize something on development policy. I hope you'll be available, all of you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Have a nice
Thank
day.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.